Hey, what's up guys? How's it going? This right here is the 2023 McLaren Artura, and I'm gonna give you guys an outside walk around, an inside tour, and talk about as much as I can about this car in the next 10 minutes. All right, so I just got done driving this car, but let's do a quick outside walk around first before we get into that aspect of it. So yes, this is a new design for the McLaren Artura. They do keep it true to the McLaren styling aesthetic, but with a, more modern and sophisticated twist. So up front, you do get the, kind of 720-esque inspired headlights right here that look like a little eye socket. But then you get a daytime running light down here. And then these are radiators for your low temp cooling system. I'll talk about why that makes sense later on. But there's some additional ducting here for that same radiator. So kind of feeding air as much as possible into that system. Going down here, you do have, this large blacked out front splitter with a center camera as part of the 360 surround view camera system, which we'll show you on the inside. A center radiator right there, our heat exchanger. And if we back up here, the same thing happens on the right hand side. But let's show you guys, on the hood here, this is the white colorway, but you do get some nice identifying features on the hood up there. And then only one windshield wiper. And it was actually really efficient with just clearing the entire windshield, but it is a pretty long wiper. And you got two arms coming off it, which is pretty unique. Going down here, these all come with carbon ceramic brakes standard, but none of that braking is regenerative braking for this vehicle. Since this is a hybrid, which we'll talk about in the powertrain, you purely get physical carbon ceramic braking as the only braking force for this vehicle. It is fitted with Pirelli P0 Corsa, and these have microchips installed, which provide more accurate pressure and temperature data, which is better for drivers to have on the track, so they can know what temperatures and pressures they're running at. So that's a new technology that's built into these tires specifically, and they come straight from the factory. You do get additional vents. Every vent here is functional. Nothing's fake when it comes to McLaren. These are under the wheel well, which help alleviate lift from builds up underneath the wheel well and kind of evacuates that along the side of the car. Going to the mirror caps here, it is color matched. They're not blacked out on this one. And you do get cameras right here as part of that 360 surround view camera system. If we take a step back, there's this iconic huge ducting that goes, and that's your high temp system right there. It's your high temp cooling. That's to cool down the components like your engine cooling, your electric motor, and stuff like that. One thing they wanted me to point out here was the fact that this hard edge here is in part due to the fact that they're enabling a new manufacturing process for this panel, which is super plastic forming. Normally you see that in the aerospace industry for high tolerance and hard to form parts, but they're actually using that here, and they're using it on this big panel, which I'll show you guys when we get around it, because it's actually just one big piece. Going up here, you do have a flying buttress, which is awesome. Allows air to attach along the window and go inside here, and then feeds to your engine. That engine, which we'll talk about right now, we might as well get into it, is a 2.9 liter twin turbo inline six paired with an electric motor that's built into this powertrain housing that combined makes 670 horsepower and 530 pound-feet of torque. All these vents here are there to cool the engine because it does get very hot. It's a hot V setup. And that middle vent right there, that port, is technically called a chimney. It takes cold air from under the vehicle. So your under tray has a little port that will feed air through the engine and it exhausts it up. See this nice little heat stream that you can see kind of radiating up from the vehicle when you're driving it around. As far as the back goes, you get standard glass with some heating elements, and then your third brake light up there. And just take a look at that flying buttress, which is really cool. Coming around back here, let's show the wheels real quick. You do get staggered setup. The rears are 20-inch wheels, 295, 35, and real quick, just to show you guys the fronts. The fronts are 235, 35 series R19s. Everything here is functional. You get a very aggressive, mesh grille out back. Your taillights, the diffuser down here, and you can actually see your suspension. Now let's talk about that real quick, guys, because this is an 8-speed transmission, but they're all 8 forward gears. There's no reverse gear on this transmission. They took that out because all the reverse is done by the electric motor. So that's something to keep in mind because they actually make sure the battery has a reserve to make sure they can go in electric so your battery doesn't deplete and then now you can't go backwards. They thought of that. And this battery can actually help jumpstart the 12-volt battery, get the engine cranked, so that if it ever does deplete, you're chilling. So there's a reserve for that as well. On the right-hand side, that is your traditional fuel cap. And like I said, this is a hybrid. It's also a plug-in hybrid. So you get 39 mpge. That's your plug-in port. It comes with a charger. It can charge as fast as 2.5 hours. You get 11 miles of EP estimated range. You can do better, whereas depending on your driving, it will go up to 81 miles per hour in that pure EV setting. So let's hop inside here. First thing you notice is the dihedral doors, which open up. You do have a button here. If you ever need to tow, it'll get you in your towing setting. But look on top underneath here, you have this ducting that goes up, but that actually lets you go down here. We've been driving it, so you got some dirt and debris kind of getting kicked up in there, but that's to channel some air into your engine. And then this is your monocoque, new monocoque chassis. That's a side cell for it, so it's actually pretty narrow. It's not super thick. And these have the regular comfort sport seats with the McLaren emblem on the headrest. There's a nice little kangaroo pouch, which McLaren has, so you can fit your phone in there. And these are actually very comfortable seats, even though they are sport bucket seats. Let me just hop in here real quick. Oh, it's not super hard to get inside, guys. We'll close the door here. Pretty easy to close. This does have the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, metal speaker grill here, speaker grill there, and then on back, I don't know if you guys saw when I was walking around it, there's one in the back right there. Let's start with the back though. You do get the shelving. Technically, there's a label that you shouldn't be putting stuff here, but that's for legal purposes. You probably can. I don't think load bearing is the concern. You can put some stuff there and you'll be fine. This center console is actually well padded. Surprised no one really talked about that. And it fits some stuff. I got my microphone equipment here and a lollipop. So you have a 12 volt, and then you have a USB-A and USB-C. And the USB-C has a phone connector emblem or phone emblem because that's how you connect to Apple CarPlay, through that port right there. That's what we're using. You get one cup holder in the middle. You have your hazards, reverse, neutral, drive. There's no park because turning the engine off, putting the parking brake is how you park a McLaren. If you know, you know. And then a little cup holder in the back. Let's start this thing up though, because it'll put us in electric mode. All right, so starting up the McLaren Artura, that's your center gauge. Press the brakes, press the engine start, and it'll start up. But it starts up in electric mode by default. You can actually change that when you have it in accessories mode. You can go into comfort using this rocker switch. Let me explain real quick. McLaren does not put buttons on the steering wheel. They don't do that. You have your paddles, which are on a rocker system. So if you pull one, it pushes the other one down. So you can actually operate this with one hand, which is nice. But all your other controls for drive modes is on your right rocker, which says P on it, and your left rocker, which has H on it. H is for handling, P is for powertrain. We're in electric mode. If I go up, we'll go to comfort, turns on the engine in this case. You can go to sport, get a more sporty layout versus that electric one that you saw earlier. And then track gives us a more track-focused orientation. Same thing on the handling side, guys. You have H, you can go comfort, sport, and track. Then you press here to turn ESC off. And if you press the center button here, it goes into manual mode. So you just use the paddle shifters there. Aside from that, this entire gauge pod steering wheel setup actually moves together, just kind of like I think we saw like the Nissan like 350Z. They move up and down together. I'll show you that, kind of moving down. They all come forward. So the distance between the steering wheel and the gauge pod stays the same. And that's important because if your hands on the steering wheel, you just reach forward and they fall right under your fingertips. Just look at that. Same thing here. So there's no distance gap changes between your gauge cluster pod and your steering wheel. Keep that in mind. Your adaptive cruise control, this does have that available, and that's your rocker switch for it. Pretty nice and straightforward. And then you do have your windshield wiper adjustments here, and then your turn signals. These are standard McLaren rocker switches. This used to be how you control your menu for your lift, but the lift is a direct button right there. You have lane keep. That's how you lock your doors, and that's how you open up the front, which we'll open up real quick. But let's talk about the center screen. It's an 8-inch touchscreen that has Apple CarPlay. It can have over-the-air updates, so they're expecting Android Auto to come out in the future. Kind of looks like an Apple Watch, honestly. And then you have this volume knob, which actually, I mean, really ergonomic for a driver just to kind of grab onto here, can brace herself, and then, you know, raise or lower the volume. But it has Apple CarPlay, which is, I guess, really kind of the key thing here. AC controls, it does have navigation, but really you're going to use Apple CarPlay. Let's be real, guys. You have AC vents here, that Bowers & Wilkins grill up there. It's all suede up front. These are actually functional vents down here, which is nice. Air comes out of that. But you also have the vents you can control here. And they actually are lined in some pretty nice, it's plastic, but still in some nice premium materials. Same thing with the doors, guys. The doors are nice leather. You suede down here. You have your window switches. you pull this, it's an electronic button, which opens your door. And I'll show you guys, there's actually a little tie down. You pull right here, you pull it out of its place. And that's how you mechanically unlatch the door in case of an emergency. Let me just turn this off real quick. Push your foot on the brake. Going to turn the engine off. And then we're gonna open up the hood. The front storage, to show you guys that real quick. Because that is the only compartment you can really open on in this car. 6 cubic feet, or I think 10 cubic feet, 6 to 10. I'll put the number right here for getting offhand. But it's pretty straightforward. This has our charger. I put my backpack. There is a car cover. Let's go inside this thing and talk about how it drives. All right, guys, so now that we're inside the McLaren, we're driving. Right now we're in sport mode. We're gonna start off in E mode, and we're in the heart of LA right now. And that's it, the engine just turns off. It's really quiet. You can hear the motors when we're up to speed, and we'll experience that in a bit. But the first thing I wanna point out here, since we're sitting around, is just the visibility. You get great forward visibility, great visibility off the side, left, right, and around back. You don't feel like you're kind of, you know, cocooned in this car. You get good visibility out front, which is a good thing to have in a car that you're gonna use pretty frequently, since this isn't like a, you know, only a weekend car. This is a car that they want to make livable and daily drivable. Like, guys, the engine's off, motor right here. As long as I don't go on the throttle too hard, I should be fine. But this is pure EV mode, so it'll go up to 81 miles an hour. And EP estimates 11 range. When this thing was fully charged, it was saying 16, but again, that'll vary significantly based on how you drive. You won't get any additional charging though, since the engine is off. So the only way to charge the engine is to have the engine running, or you plug it in. So there's no regen. So the nice thing about that is the brakes feel progressive and normal. They didn't have to do any tuning between regen and regular brakes. What we're gonna do right now is we're just gonna hit the rocker, go into comfort here. It'll keep the engine off because it doesn't need it, to be honest. It'll be a hybrid mix. It's not called hybrid because it's not catered towards efficiency. In this case, it's catered towards comfort. You do get a tachometer, the engine's off, so there's nothing that it's reading right now. But it will, if you do tip into the throttle a little bit, it will turn on the engine, and we'll get to experience that. But you know what? Actually, we're not gonna even wait for me to tip in. I'm gonna turn on the engine by just going into sport mode. Doing it again in track, it'll be a little more aggressive. It'll hold the gears like it would in a normal track mode. And then you get to hear it. If you actually look back at the chimney, take a look at the back, you can see it radiating that heat. Just to show how much heat really comes out of that and how functional and intentful that chimney is. It's cool to look back at. It gives you kind of like fighter jet vibes. So yeah. One other thing I noticed from this center gauge cluster is the fact that it actually does give you turn-by-turn navigation from your Apple CarPlay setup directly here. So you don't have to just look down here. It actually show up there, which not many cars integrate really well. And I'm surprised they actually had that in this vehicle. I think it's super useful. It's not something a lot of people pay attention to, but I think if you're actually using this car to navigate somewhere, having your turn-by-turn up here instead of having to look down here all the time, it's pretty nice. So if anyone here on this 8-inch touchscreen wants to go into music, change menus, you don't have to worry about missing out on your turns in your navigation because it's up on the center gauge cluster as well. So other comments I have about this 8-inch touchscreen, it works. I've been using Apple CarPlay pretty much the entire time. The only other menu I've used is the AC. I haven't used built-in navigation. You can monitor the built-in navigation maps in your center gauge cluster as well, but I haven't felt the need to do that. I feel like most people won't. So yeah, just something to think about. All right, getting on the freeway here. It drives like a normal car. I mean, it's surprisingly comfortable. I believe when I looked at like their presentation or some other YouTube channels like Savage Geese, they said there's like a 30% difference between the stiffest and the softest setting. And the softest setting really makes it good for day-to-day driving, which I appreciate, because I think right here in the city, we'd get our backs beaten up if we were in like track mode or had a stiffer comfort setting. So, and then talking about steering, even though we're not really turning right now, this is a hydroelectric, very traditional steering system, and it feels normal. I don't miss I don't want a newer steering setup, variable adjustment rack, anything complicated. They stuck to what works, and it's nice. That, along with the traditional brake system. I do want to know on the brakes though, when you do want to change from like drive, neutral, reverse, you really have to step on the brakes. You can't be kind of on it. It won't let you unless you're fully pressing on it with decent amount of pressure. So let's actually get into a lane here, and let's turn on adaptive cruise control. It's pretty simple. You just use this toggle right here, speed limit, and we just let's set it. Hold up, we do resume. There we go, cruise. And yeah, you'll see it on the gauge cluster right there. And this will just do everything. I can increase the speed, lower the speed like a normal system. And it's nice. It's nice to have in a supercar when you just are stuck in traffic like we are today. So yeah, that's in traffic in a McLaren. Brakes, so you can adjust your distance as well. There's 3 different, levels depending on what you want, which is nice. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. I'll try my best to answer, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.